essentially saying that in the end, football financing will implode. Somebody will make a decision. It could be a whim of Rupert Murdoch to just say, we're not going to do this anymore. We are not going to pay this kind of money. And through one stroke of the pen, you would get billions of pounds disappearing from football almost overnight. They might have a sort of year or 2 years to prepare for it. But how on earth would these clubs survive? Because would their players really sort of settle for halving their wages, or their wages even going down by 90%? I gave you a statistic earlier, which was that in 1987, the average wage of a Division 1 player, and think about this, the sort of famous players that were playing around that time, John Barnes, for example, would have been earning £25,000, £30,000 a year. And that was what, frankly, a lot of us were earning at the time. I don't know anyone who's earning the equivalent of a Premier League salary at the moment, and I suspect you don't either, unless you happen to know a Premier League footballer. So the fact that these salaries have gone so out of kilter, I wonder what that says about our society in general. Let's talk to Mo, who's in Putney. Hello, Mo.
Hi, I just want to say that, I believe that minimum wage, it should be living wage, but in companies, some companies can't afford living wage. So I just
well, that is true, and I mean there are always going to be some that won't be able to. And I think that the big question that everybody's got to cope with is, well, if companies can pay it but they don't, what should happen? And I suspect companies like that who have a lot of customers, organisations like Citizens UK or whoever, I suppose they need to say, well, look, this company doesn't do it. Wouldn't you rather give your custom to a company that does do it? That's the logic of it, I guess, Mo. And that's where I think, in the long term, that's where this debate will actually be heading. Well, I suspect it is something that will be discussed a lot more on this radio station over the coming couple of years or so. Now, coming up after 7, we're going to turn our attention to Labour's Shadow Business Secretary, Chuka Umunna. He's going to be joining us for one of his regular phone-ins with us. He's here to take your calls for a whole hour. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. Labour's been in the news a lot over the last couple of years about its attitude to business. This is your opportunity to quiz Chuka Umunna. Not just that, but I would particularly like to hear from you if you are in business and you have a view on Labour's policy towards business. Do you fear a Labour government? That's what the chief executive of Boots said a couple of weeks ago. Ed Miliband socked it right back to him. Do you think Ed Miliband was right? You'll hear what Chuka Umunna thinks about that in just a moment.
On FM, online, on your mobile and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 7 o'clock, Hillary Clinton has urged Britain to stop relying on gas from Russia. The former US Secretary of State, who's widely tipped to run for president next year, has been meeting Boris Johnson in New York. London's mayor told LBC that Moscow's aggression in Ukraine was high on the agenda.
A strong feeling. We in Europe, we in Western Europe, we need an energy policy that allows us to be able, as it were, to stand up to what she clearly feels is an adventurist policy, a sort of re-Yaltification, if you like, of Europe at the hands of Vladimir Putin.
It comes as the leaders of France, Germany, Russia and Ukraine hold talks in Minsk to try to agree a peace deal to end fighting in eastern Ukraine. Smoking in cars with children will be outlawed in England from October, following a final vote by MPs. The Department of Health says the regulations are to protect young people from serious health risks. The Health Secretary says bullying, intimidation and victimisation in the NHS will not be tolerated. A new report has found that health service staff have been driven to the brink of suicide after raising concerns about patient care. Jeremy Hunt has announced that laws to protect whistleblowers will be fast-tracked. The Conservative Party chairman, Grant Shapps, has told LBC that proves concerns about patient care are being taken seriously.
This is probably the first time that there's been a Secretary of State who has just made it absolutely clear that the culture which can lead to these types of things being covered up absolutely is at an end and has to end, and that there's going to be steps taken to make sure that that happens.
The new head of the government's inquiry into institutionalised child sex abuse has suggested it could take up to 4 years to complete. New Zealand High Court Judge Lal Goddard says she hopes it'll start work in early April. 13 people have been arrested in a Met Police operation targeting gangs and drugs in East London. 150 officers were involved in this morning's raids, which focused on gang members who operate in and around Leytonstone High Road. Thousands of pounds worth of cash and a gun were seized. A man's been charged with child grooming and sexual assault relating to a 12-year-old girl in Rotherham. 34-year-old Richard Ingalls from Sheffield appeared in court this morning and has been bailed until later this month. A verdict is expected shortly in the trial of the captain of the Costa Concordia. The cruise ship capsized off the Italian island of Giglio in 2012. Francesco Schettino denies several counts relating to the deaths of 32 people. 2 24-hour strikes planned by London bus workers in a row over pay have been suspended. Unite Union members were due to walk out on Friday and again next Monday. And EastEnders actress Linda Henry has been cleared of racially abusing a council warden. The 55-year-old who plays Shirley Carter in the soap was accused of using the language after being asked to pick up a cigarette butt in Greenwich last year. LBC weather, a dry and cloudy night in London and the southeast, a low of 3 Celsius. A similar picture across much of the rest of the UK, with some showers possible in northern Scotland and parts of southern England. Tomorrow, mostly cloudy, with some sunshine in northern parts. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Rupert Bhatia.
I'm Joanne Webb in the LBC Travel Centre on the M1 in Hertfordshire. Very slow up to junction 9 at the A5. There was an accident just after the junction. All the vehicles involved are on the hard shoulder, but it's still extremely slow. Also in Hertfordshire on the M25 on the anti-clockwise side. Very slow from junction 25 at the A10 to junction 24 at Potters Bar. Also on the M25, but on the Surrey stretch, it's slow anti-clockwise from junction 6 at Godson to 5 at the M26. And that's after an accident. One lane is closed for recovery. The M4's not looking good at all. Heading eastbound, it is slow from junction 6 at Slough to the M25 because just after there a car overturned earlier. It's all now back open, but it's still very slow. But then also it's very slow on the M4 going eastbound to the Chiswick roundabout because Chelsea are playing at home at Stamford Bridge. Kick-off is at 7:45. They're taking on Everton, and Fulham Road right outside the stadium is also closed. In London, there are delays on the North Circular Road eastbound to Henley's Corner after an accident, and the A12 is still very busy in both directions to Gants Hill, also after an accident. In Nottinghamshire, there are delays on the M1 northbound between junctions 27 at Hucknall and junction 28 at Alfreton, and that's because of an accident. It's taking about half an hour to get through that queue. And also in Gloucestershire, there are delays on the M4 eastbound to junction 18 at Bath. Keeping you moving, your next travel update in 15 minutes.
LBC Travel.
With Go-To Meeting. Meet face-to-face without travelling place to place.
This is LBC, leading Britain's conversation with Ian Dale at Drive. Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Ian Dale at Drive on LBC.
Hello, very good evening to you. It's Ian Dale at Drive, leading Britain's conversation every weekday between 4 and 8 here on LBC. Over the next hour, it's your chance to put your questions to the Shadow Business Secretary, Chuka Umunna. He's here for the whole hour, unless he decides to do what he did on Sky News and depart a little bit early, but I hope he won't be doing that. I'll ask him about that in just a second, but there's lots to talk to him about. We've just been talking about the living wage. You might want to ring in and ask him about that. And what about Labour's attitude to business? That has been in the news quite a lot over the last couple of weeks, and I suspect a lot of you will have views on that too. 0345 6060 973. Well, Chuka Umunna, it's been a long time. Your first visit of the year.
It has. It's nice to be back.
Now, just tell us what happened. Let me just sort of explain to our listeners that you were doing an interview on Sky News one afternoon.
Yes.
I can't actually even remember what it was about now, but you should we say, departed a little abruptly.
I'd been asked to come on to Sky News, and I'd been actually on a number of other outlets to talk about the Prime Minister's speech that day on the economy, and so I was asked, as I usually am, to come and speak about the economy and business. And about 2/3 way through the interview, I was asked about some comments, in particular a letter that the Community Secretary had sent to the Muslim leaders of our country about radicalisation of young Muslim people. And well, I don't know if you have a clip of what happened, but basically, the long and short of it is that I was. Some people had accused the Community Secretary of patronising our Muslim leaders in this country in his letter. I had seen the comments, I had heard extracts. In fact, Dermot Monaghan read out some extracts to me and wanted me to agree with the notion that this was patronising. And I refused to do so because I hadn't read the letter in full. And he then proceeded to criticise me for not having read it and suggested that I go and get my lines from the party and then come back in half an hour. And shortly after he brought the interview to a close, I hadn't actually walked out in the middle of the interview. The interview had ended, but I left. I was very, very angry, I'll be honest with you. I was furious, in fact. I was pretty angry. And so I left.
We like it when you're angry.
Well, I left before the camera came off me and went back to the Sky News Centre.
Waved as a very
I was just kind of like, and I think the thing that I just was frustrated because the easy thing for me to do, I suppose, would have been to play politics with the issue and to accuse the community sector, attack the Conservative Community Secretary for being patronising. But I didn't feel it was appropriate to do that. It's not really, I'm not the most tribal of politicians in some respects. And I felt, well, if you haven't read the exact words in the letter, to accuse the UK Community Secretary of patronising Britain's Muslims, I just didn't want to really go down that avenue. And I felt very angry that I was being attacked for not doing the usual Westminster thing and playing party politics with what is a very sensitive issue. So it's not something I plan on doing again.
Let's move on.
I suppose we're all human, aren't we? And I wasn't terribly happy.
Just before we move on, we are live on the LBC website. If you want to watch us as well as listen to us, lbc.co.uk is where you need to go. Prime Minister's questions today was one of the most rumbustious, I think, in recent times. Ed Miliband got very personal with David Cameron, and he made accusations against the former Tory party treasurer, Lord Fink, who's reacted very angrily. I don't know if you've seen his letter to Ed Miliband. Should Ed Miliband not apologise now to Lord Fink for what he said, the allegations that he made using parliamentary privilege?
Well, look, for legal reasons, as much from my point of view as from the point of view of LBC, I'm not going to comment on any.
Well, we're not going to talk
about
the allegations, but
it's very hard.
Lord Fink has refuted what Ed Miliband said.
It is very hard to discuss the exchange in PMQs today without relating it back to the individuals concerned. And for legal reasons, I am simply not prepared. Maybe that's just my caution as a qualified solicitor.
Come on. Well, what legal reasons? I mean, if there were legal reasons, I wouldn't be asking you the question because I would get into trouble as well.
Yes,
you can comment on whether you think Ed Miliband got it slightly wrong and shouldn't have used parliamentary privilege to do what he did.
I think it's fair to raise the issue of tax avoidance and evasion as a topic of conversation in the House of Commons. Of course it is. And I think, generally speaking, without reference to any particular individual, one of the problems with the issues that have arisen around HSBC, it's dominated the news headlines for the last 48 hours, is the impression that it gives that if you avoid your responsibilities and your obligations, as I said, I'm not commenting in relation to any specific individual in saying that. I'm making a generic statement. But if you avoid your responsibilities and obligations to pay tax in this country, somehow you appear to be able to get off. But if you're one of my constituents and you avoid your responsibilities in respect of our benefit system,
but you may not be willing to talk about individuals, but Ed Miliband certainly is. He also raised the issue of the former Trade Minister, Lord Green, who you only 18 months ago invited to go on a trade mission with you.
I didn't, no.
That's what David Cameron accused
Well, David Cameron was incorrect, and I categorically can say that is not true.
I have seen a picture of you with him on a panel.
Yes, and that was not on a trade mission, unless you think Lambeth is a foreign country, Ian. But I did what you do, which is
in Lambeth,
I invited the then Trade Minister to come and address a gathering of local businesses in my constituency, in the Brixton part of my constituency, an event which had been organised by the Federation of Small Businesses and Lambeth Council. And I think I'm entitled to presume that when the Prime Minister appoints a minister to a position, all the relevant checks have been made and all the relevant questions have been asked. I suppose it's not really for me to carry out due diligence.
I suppose they would have been had your government actually acted on the information it got in 2008 on what HSBC had been up to, as Margaret Hodge pointed out in her committee this afternoon.
No, the point at the time of his appointment was that there were various allegations that had been made against HSBC, and the question was whether those questions had been posed to him. Now, I believe that, as a local constituency MP, I'm entitled to presume that when the Prime Minister appoints somebody to be one of Her Majesty's ministers, that these checks have been carried out. But the Prime Minister, was totally categorically wrong to say that I took him on a trade mission. Because clearly I didn't, and Lambeth is not a foreign country.
You've cleared that up, but why didn't the Labour government in 2008 act on the information given to HMRC by I think it was the French authorities or the Swiss? Somebody certainly got in contact with HMRC, and the head of HMRC today had a very uncomfortable time in front of Margaret Hodge.
I haven't seen the hearing, but what I do know is that in May 2010, the information was passed to HMRC. And of course, we'd left government at that point. And you would have expected when HMRC got that information, given the public interest, the numbers involved, that they would have brought it to the attention of ministers. But ultimately, Ian, if I'm honest with you, my own view is I don't think government, Westminster, our financial services sector in particular, comes out well at all out of this. Our financial services sector, maybe I say this as a London MP, is, incredibly competitive. We've got a comparative advantage. We're good at financial services. And the problem when things like this happen, it calls into question the integrity of that sector. And the sooner, frankly, in the national interest, these issues are cleared up, HMRC explains why it didn't act on these things.
Let's move on to a caller.
The better from the point of view of the country, I think.
David is in Hendon. Hello, David. What would you like to ask?
Hi, Ian. Hi, Chuka. Thanks for taking my call.
What would you like to ask, David?
My question is I'm an owner of a small business, and with this possible policy of giving more money and a longer paternity pay, how does the Labour government intend to protect small businesses like myself?
Well, you won't have to pay any more for any of your employees to take the extra paternity leave and pay. That is something that will be paid by the government, David.
Up to a point, because you might have to employ somebody else to take over their role if they're having a month off rather than 2 weeks.
Well, I'm not sure that is generally going to be the case. And in any event, many businesses are already doing this. Now, my view is that if you enable parents to manage their affairs around manage their working lives, I suppose, around their responsibilities, not only does that make them happier and they're more productive employees, but it also means that we have got a society, in particular with fathers, where we want fathers to play more of a role in the care of their children, but we don't make that very easy. David, by the way, I should say, I absolutely understand where you're coming from. I used to be an employment lawyer before I was elected. I advised companies, large and small, and I know how certainly when you're faced with these things, it can seem a bit daunting. But what I found when I advised, and I don't know what how big your company is. You say you're a small business. Usually, when I kind of work through the issues with my clients, often that what seemed to be a burden wasn't as onerous as was sometimes thought.
Okay.
That's not to say that there aren't issues that employment rights and employment law pose for small businesses. I think there are,
David,
and we need to address those.
How will this affect your business?
It will affect me because I've got 6 employees altogether, and every single one of them, bar none, are key. I'm in investments. I have people working in building and planning. If one guy leaves for a month, that can literally destroy a project.
And what's your business?
I have an investment firm. We do, it's mainly for overseas investors. We have UK customers as well.
Right.
We do we source, we get planning, we build, and then we let and manage properties. And the problem is I don't have massive departments. I've got, one person doing each thing. And if they leave for a month, I don't know if you can imagine.
I can, absolutely.
OK, David, thank you very much for that. Several other people calling in on this, actually, so we might come to one or two of your calls on this after the travel. 0345 6060 973. Chuka Umunna, Labour Shadow Business Secretary, here with me till 8 to take your calls. This is LBC. It's 16 minutes past 7.
This is Adam Moore in the LBC Travel Centre. Good evening. Well, it's a busy night on the road, especially on the M4. Some long queues eastbound towards the M25 in London. It's been caused by a car which overturned during an accident near to Junction 4 as the Heathrow spur, the A408. The inside lane still blocked there, and 2 lanes are shut on the exit slip at Junction 4 on the eastbound side to Heathrow. So that's causing big queues at the moment, all the way back past the M25 towards Junction 6. That's the exit for Slough and Windsor. Delays if you're heading northbound on the M1 after an accident from earlier which blocked the northbound M1 at Junction 10 for Luton Airport. All lanes back open but still queuing from Junction 8 at Hemel. In Kent, the M20 southbound, there's a lane shut. There's been a multi-car accident there, closing the inside lane between Junction 7 at Maidstone and Junction 8, the exit for Leeds Castle and Maidstone services. Keeping you moving, your next travel update is in 15 minutes.
LBC Travel.
With Go-To Meeting. Meet face-to-face without travelling place to place.
There's something wonderful about walking in winter. Cold, crisp air, the first frost underfoot, and my favourite bit, coming back to the warmth of home.
With £400 off a new boiler in the British Gas Winter Warmer sale, you can keep your home cosy all year round. And with our fixed price guarantee, the price we quote is the price you'll pay. So to get £400 off a boiler, call 0800 754 754 or visit britishgas.co.uk. Offer ends 28th of February. Conditions apply.
3, 2, 1. When I was a cat, my paws were firmly on the ground. But now I'm a dog. I'm going places. We have liftoff.
Fuel your phone with loads of data in Rocket Speed 4G on an O2 SIM-only deal and get 2 months free on selected tariffs. Be more dog. Search O2 SIM-only.
Tariff price subject to RPI terms, data costs and 12-month contract apply. Check o2.co.uk. The A to Z of new Corsa. M is for more, including Bluetooth as standard on all our deals. O is for OMG, it's even got 17-inch black alloy wheels. R is for rapid heated windscreen. E is for eye-catching styling kit that just needs to be seen. The brilliant new Corsa. M-O-R-E. More for less. New Corsa limited edition 3-door for just $149 per month over 23 months with 2533 advance rental. Visit your local Vauxhall retailer or vauxhall.co.uk/new Corsa. Personal contract hire. Excess annual miles over 8,000 charged at 6.63 pence per mile. You will not own the car. T's and C's apply. Offer ends April 1st.
To all of you strangers up for the first time, welcome. And as for the rest of you, cheats, adulterers, slaves of empire.
From the final days of the British Raj.
This is our home for as long as we like.
To the fight for independence.
We seek self-rule.
Julie Walters stars.
Told you I'd take care of you.
Indian Summers. Major new drama starts 15th of February on Channel 4.
118434, the handy number for handy numbers.
Calls cost 76 pence plus £1.53 per minute from a BT landline. Other networks vary and mobiles cost considerably more.
Breakfast in America with Nick Ferrari.
The first thing that strikes you is the eerie calm, the silence.
For me personally, I think about, the last moments that these people had. I think about the people on the airplanes.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Every weekday morning from 7, only on LBC.
With Hampton by Hilton, with over 2,000 hotels worldwide.
20 past 7 here on LBC. Chuka Umunna is with me taking your calls for the next 40 minutes or so. You can watch us on the LBC website, lbc.co.uk. 0345 6060 973 if you would like to ask Chuka a question. Let's go to Herbie in Hayes. Hello, Herbie.
Yes, good evening, Ian. Good evening, Chuka.
Hi, Herbie.
Chuka,
considering we've been talking and hearing about Labour and business all week, how comes Ed Miliband's disappeared and not been seen at some of these conferences, which I thought would be very important for the businesses?
You're talking about the British Chambers of Commerce conference, which took place yesterday. Where was Ed Miliband that was so important that he couldn't be at that conference?
I don't know, actually. I haven't got a clue where he was. I don't monitor his movements day by day. But it's not true to say...
But you knew I might ask you about it, presumably.
I thought there was some much more important...
Sack your special advisor immediately for not warning you.
Somebody's going to be glaring at you through the glass right now. I honestly don't know, but what I do know is that he spoke at the CBI's annual conference towards the end of last year. He has spoken at the British Chambers conference. He will be speaking at a major conference of the EEF and other big business organisations.
Only by various business leaders of not really understanding the world of business, and then you don't turn up at a fairly major conference, it has to be said. I mean, the Prime Minister was there. I think Nick Clegg was there. It just feeds into that narrative, doesn't it?
Well, I'm not sure I agree with that. I mean, it's a narrative, and you talk about some business leaders. Let's not forget, a lot of those business leaders were Conservative peers, donors and supporters.
A couple of them had been Labour donors.
Sure, I accept that. But the Labour Party was represented by its Shadow Business Secretary, me, and our Shadow Chancellor. And, you had two, fairly prominent, I suppose, Labour figures speaking at the conference. On the Tory side, you had the Prime Minister, but you didn't have George Osborne wasn't at the conference. And what we tend to do is...
But the Prime Minister was. He's First Lord of the Treasury, in case it had escaped your notice.
Really?
Yeah.
I had no idea that David Cameron was the Prime Minister. Ian. But what really matters, I think, is not necessarily whether Ed manages to turn up to every single business conference. I mean, he's spoken at a huge number of them.
Well, nobody's suggesting that, but this is one of the big events
Ian,
of the year.
Let me finish my sentence. And the rest of the sentence was going to be, the question is, what are we going to actually do for businesses? And if you look across the policy spectrum, whether it's setting up a small business administration like the US Small Business Administration for us small businesses, which the Federation of Small Businesses has asked for, he has spoken at their conference, by the way, or establishing a British investment bank. We actually carried out a consultation on those plans through the British Chambers, or ensuring that we remain members of the European Union, which is something we talk a lot to the CBI about. I think it's policies and action that actually matter. And I look at the things that we've done for business more generally during our time in opposition. I instigated Small Business Saturday, bringing together all the different business organisations and different parties to
I'm sure we'll
put
talk
together
about some
the
of those
biggest
issues
celebration of
in a
business
minute.
our country's seen in a generation.
But Ed Balls yesterday couldn't answer the question, where was Ed Miliband today, that was more important than appearing at this conference. You can't answer it now. And I do think that it's a bit of an odd situation for senior, and you two are very senior in the Shadow Cabinet. I'd have thought you ought to have known where your leader was.
Funnily enough, we don't monitor our leaders.
No, after Ed Balls was asked the question, why weren't you informed so you could actually answer the question on programmes like this?
Because frankly, we think there are more important issues to be talking about, which is how we're going to grow our economy, how we're going to be able to ensure that your listeners' children and grandchildren go on and do as well as, if not better, than the older generations in their family. This kind of Westminster tittle-tattle as to who's turned up and stood at a lectern at a conference is not really going to change the lives of your listeners.
And ordinarily, I would agree with you on that. But I do think when you are fighting a narrative which, for whatever reason, has taken hold in the media and among some business people, I would have thought you needed to try and do something to counter that.
The most important thing, as far as I'm concerned, is not what the Westminster media bubble says, but actually what our businesses say out in the country. I'm utterly determined that going into this general election campaign, that we don't see a business debate dominated by a few establishment figures who are in London. It's really important that businesses, large and small, in every single region, from Aberdeen to Carlisle to Cardiff, wherever it is in the UK, that they get to have their say in this general election debate and talk about the policies, whether it's finance, whether it's on skills, whether it's ensuring that our companies get more of a look in on the money that government spends on procurement, for example. That's what I'm passionate about. I'm not, I'll leave other people to discuss lecterns.
Okay,
I'm going to focus on
Herbie,
business.
do you want to talk about lecterns? What would you like to say to what Chuka has said?
Well, I think it's a shame that Ed Miliband didn't have the decency to either apologise to you, Chuka and Ed Balls to say he wasn't going to be there, because most businesses would have wanted to talk to him personally as the leader of the Labour Party. You know, it's no good. You know, it's no good having the organ grinder if sending the monkeys there. So it's not being rude when I say that.
What are you saying? I don't feel like a monkey, Herbie.
I think he meant it in a caring way.
Yeah, it's funny.
I think we'll move on from that one. But I mean, when you look at the task that Labour has got looking ahead, do you not think that Ed Miliband played it wrong in his reaction to what the chief executive of Boots said? I mean, he really came out fighting, and I think a lot of people thought, "Oh, good on him," but it kind of backfired, didn't it?
Well, I think it was these were very unusual comments for a senior executive on a board.
So let's just remind our listeners, he basically said that a Labour government will be a catastrophe for business. So I don't blame Ed Miliband for feeling a bit narked about that.
Yeah, they were pretty personal comments, and they actually didn't really relate to any policy. In fact, the only area that he referred to was Europe, where he seems to agree with us. But I think the Director General of the British Chambers, John Longworth, who talks a lot of sense on a lot of things, I think he put it well yesterday when he was asked the question about this. And he said it's perfectly legitimate for Mr. Pacina to make his comments as a business person, but equally it's perfectly legitimate and reasonable, given the nature of those comments, for us to point to what his motivation might be. And, you know, we're talking about Mr. Pacina. Let's not forget there are almost 5 million businesses in this country. He is a leader of one of them.
A fairly big one, it has to be said.
I don't deny that.
Let's go to Debbie, who's in Bexley Heath. Hi, Debbie.
Hi there.
What would you like to ask?
Hello. Right. I'm really confused right now with who to vote for. So without baffling me with politics speak, please, and skirting around the houses, as a small business owner, I would like to know why I should vote for you. And if you were to get into power, how can I be assured that you will actually deliver those policies promised to voters?
Great question, Debbie. Well, ultimately, I believe that it's people like you who will be able to grow our economy. Small businesses create 2/3 of private sector jobs. I think it's ultimately the private sector that's going to be able to grow our economy and create more of the kind of jobs that we want to see. But we've got to make sure that there's the right environment to support you. So I want to make sure that we've got a banking system that serves you and not the other way around, and that where people have got good, responsible business plans, they can get the finance that they need. That's not the case now, which is why we're going to set up a proper British investment bank and a network, a regional network, to ensure that you can get access to the finance that you need. I know all too well that it's not just access to finance, it's cash flow. I think it's outrageous how some of our small businesses, big customers, don't pay them on time. So we're going to stop that from happening by having them pay an 8% interest rate automatically on the monies that are owed to you. I want to make sure that you can get access to people with the skills that you need to help your business grow. Too many small businesses I speak to tell me that a lot of our young people don't have the basics, so we're going to have all our young people learn English and maths to 18. And I also want to ensure that we've got the right infrastructure for you, which is why ensuring that we've got proper broadband connectivity across the country is really important, and that we've got a transport system that works, particularly if you're self-employed. A lot of people really rely on those things. Now, you said, well, how do I know that you will deliver these things? We've been very specific about what it is we want to do. What I said in relation to late payment, we're actually trying to change the law right now to do that, to affect that before we were elected. And we're trying to do that in the small business bill. So in terms of showing, our direction of travel and our intent, I think that's a good example of it.
Right. Well, Chuka has had about 2 minutes to convince you, Debbie. Has he succeeded?
Well, to be honest with you, I think with a small business, I like to see things on my doorstep that are going to work for me, not long-term investments. Things like business rates going up and fuel bills going up ridiculously. And while people are spending less money, there's been no break for the small business to ride through the storm. And now they're talking about wanting to put people's wages up, and Cameron thinks that it'd be a good idea to pay people more. I just feel that there's nothing...
Debbie, on those two things, on those doorstep issues you mentioned, in relation to business rates, we're going to cut business rates if we're elected in May, and then we will freeze them in the following financial year. That should save, on average, around £350 to £400 for your average small business, with a rateable value up to £50,000 in London. I see you're calling from Bexley Heath. And secondly, in relation to our energy price freeze, we're going to cap the costs so that they can't impose these hikes for 17 months when we're elected, pending actually overhauling the way energy is regulated to bring down people's fuel bills.
Well, I think there's a couple of things you said in that your first answer there that I wanted to come back to after the news and travel. Debbie, thank you very much for your call. I'm Ian Dale at Drive, LBC News Time. It's 7:31. News Time with Peter Ferris.
The captain of the Costa Concordia cruise ship has been convicted of multiple counts of manslaughter and sentenced to 16 years in prison. Judges have delivered their verdicts on Francesco Schettino, who was in charge of the vessel the night it went aground on rocks on Giglio Island in 2012, resulting in the deaths of 32 people. The former American Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is urging Britain and other European countries to become less reliant on gas from Russia. The Mayor, Boris Johnson, has told LBC Ukraine was high on the agenda during their 50 minutes of talks in New York. The leaders of France, Germany, Russia and Ukraine are negotiating in Minsk a peace deal to end fighting in eastern Ukraine. Smoking in cars with children will be outlawed in England from October following a final vote by MPs. The Department of Health says the regulations are to protect young people from serious health risks. LBC Business News, the euro has slipped to its lowest value against the pound for more than 7 years. It's now trading at 74p, weakened by the prospect Greece may leave the single currency. Free Wi-Fi is to be rolled out across all trains in England and Wales from 2017. David Cameron has announced a £50 million plan to initially launch mobile internet on services operated by TSGN, South Eastern, Chiltern and Arriva Trains Wales. And London, New York and San Francisco have experienced a sharp drop in the number of thefts of smartphones. Apple, Samsung and Google have all fitted so-called kill switches to their devices, enabling owners to render a phone useless if it's stolen. In the city, the FTSE 100 ended the day at 68.18, down 10 points. LBC weather, a dry and cloudy night for London and the southeast with a low of 3 degrees. A similar picture across much of the rest of the UK with some showers possible in northern Scotland and parts of southern England. Tomorrow will be mostly cloudy with some sunshine in northern areas. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Peter Ferris.
This is Adam Moore in the LBC Travel Centre with the M4's a struggle this evening as you head eastbound towards London. It's all been caused by a multi-car accident that happened earlier this evening at Junction 4, the exit for Heathrow and Uxbridge. The inside lane there is still closed after a car overturned. Another car's ended up on the exit slip road, so 2 out of 3 lanes are shut on the eastbound exit slip to the roundabout for Heathrow and Uxbridge. That's causing queues back past the M25, back past Junction 5 at Langley towards Slough at Junction 6. Delays at the moment around 30 to 40 minutes. M25 anti-clockwise very slow after a multi-car accident blocking a lane between Godstone and the M26 Junction 6 to 5. Delays tonight in Nottinghamshire. The M1 northbound, a lane's been shut for recovery work after an accident. The inside lane shut at the moment between Junction 27, that's Hucknall, and Junction 28 for Alfreton and the exit for the A38. Keeping you moving. Your next travel update is in 15 minutes.
LBC Travel
With Go2 Meeting, making international meetings easy.
The A to Z of new Corsa. M is for more, including Bluetooth as standard on all our deals. O is for OMG, it's even got 17-inch black alloy wheels. R is for rapid heated windscreen. E is for eye-catching styling kit that just needs to be seen. The brilliant new Corsa, M-O-R-E. More for less. New Corsa limited edition 3-door for just $149 per month over 23 months with 2533 advance rental. Visit your local Vauxhall retailer or vauxhall.co.uk/new Corsa. Personal contract hire. Excess annual miles over 8,000 charged at 6.63 pence per mile. You will not own the car. T's and C's apply. Offer ends April 1st.
Remembering every phone number you've ever called is not impressive. What is impressive is remembering to call 118434 whenever you need a number. 118434. It's the handy number for handy numbers.
Calls cost 76 pence plus £1.53 per minute from a BT landline. Other networks vary and mobiles cost considerably more.
Stick a pin in the calendar, write a reminder on the fridge, tie a note to the dog. However you do it, don't forget that Britain's best deal on totally unlimited broadband ends on February the 19th. It's your last chance to get 1 year's free broadband from TalkTalk with 1670 line rental. It's the gift that keeps giving, and it'll save you £188 versus BT. But hurry, the offer ends on February the 19th. So whatever else you do between now and then, don't forget to visit talktalk.co.uk, a brighter home for everyone. 18-month contract and conditions apply. See website for comparison details. Excludes gift card. Price after promo £3.50.
The wheels on the bus don't go round and round, round and round, round and round. The wheels on the bus don't go round and round all day long.
If your commute is driving you round the bend, try video meetings using Citrix GoToMeeting to meet colleagues face-to-face from home. You'll save time, money and your sanity. Start your free 30-day trial now. Visit gotomeeting.co.uk.
The people on the bus are now late for work. Late for work. Academy Award nominated for Best Picture.
Those that have gone before us say no more.
Selma is a truly great film. Oyelowo is electrifying as Martin Luther King. 5 stars, says the Daily Telegraph.
What happens when a man stands up, says enough is enough?
It's outstanding, says the Times. The best film of the year. Selma, in cinemas now.
Ian Dale at Drive on LBC.
It's 7:36 here on LBC. Chuka Umunna is here taking your calls, 0345 6060 973. Saturday is Valentine's Day. Just want to remind you about that. Are you doing anything special for Valentine's Day?
I am.
What's that?
I'm not disclosing it. It'll spoil the surprise.
Is it going to see 50 Shades of Grey?
No.
Because apparently that's going to be helping a lot of businesses in this country. The sale of rope and chains apparently is going to be on the increase. So I suppose we should all welcome that. But you're not going to play ball with this,
I've just not played ball with this because I know where it's going to go. Okay. It's not going to end happily for me.
Right, let's go to Rebecca, who's in Hendon. Hello, Rebecca.
Hi, Ian. Hi, Chuka.
Hi, Rebecca.
Hiya. My question for you, Chuka. The other day, you and Ed Balls went off to the Chambers of Commerce conference.
That's right.
Yeah, today, Labour's most senior woman, Harriet Harman, and various other Labour female MPs are driving around in a pink bus. Do you really believe that this is promoting equality for women in Parliament?
I wouldn't quite put it like that. What we're trying to do with this tour that Harriet, Lucy and Gloria in the Shadow Cabinet are leading...
The Thelma and Louises of the Labour Party.
What about the third person in that? Anyway, I'm not. Look, he's trying to distract me, Rebecca, from answering your question. But the point is, what we're trying to do is to ensure that we get more women involved with this general election. At the last general election, more than 9 million women didn't vote. We need to sort that out, and we're trying to do politics in a bit of a different way. Look, in terms of, let me just go. Let me go.
There's only 9 million men that didn't vote. Are you and Ed Balls going to get some sort of white van and go around and persuade men to vote for you?
I don't think that there were as many men as women who didn't participate.
It's just that people are saying it's a bit patronising. That's the issue.
In terms of the colour, the reason the colour was chosen, I think, as I understand it, is that the backdrop of, if you look at the backdrop of our conference, it was the same colour. There's been a bit of debate about what the colour is, whether it's pink, magenta, or cerise, or whatever. The colour is also part of the logo, the One Nation Labour logos, which is why I think it was used. But a lot of the people, and Rebecca, I understand absolutely understand where you're coming from, but a lot of the people who've kind of blown this up are not people who have any kind of record in terms of women's rights. And the bigger issue, actually, Ian, is where are the other parties' plans for how they're going to help women? By the way, actually, it's not... I'll just be absolutely clear, because I can just hear a lot of listeners thinking this. It's not just women, actually. We need to get more young people registered and involved. 1 in 4 black people is not registered to vote in the election.
Black bus?
No, look, I'm not suggesting. I mean, like I said, the colour was chosen.
But you said, would the other parties do this? I think if the Tories had done this with a pink bus, you would have been accusing the Tories of being very patronising to women.
My question was, what are they doing for women? That's the real issue. The reason that these, a lot of people, and I'm not saying this about you, Rebecca, by the way, it'd be absolutely clear on that, but a lot of the reason why people want to have this discussion about the colour of a bus is because they don't want to talk about the effect of their policies on women, and that's what I'd rather talk about.
So is this a women-only bus? Will Chuka Umunna be appearing on the pink bus at some point?
I don't know. I haven't been invited yet, but I'd happily go. I go campaigning.
You think you'd be allowed on?
I don't know. Not
what
too sure.
would it say if you said to Harriet, "Come on, I want to go on your next trip," and she said, "No, it's women only"?
I don't think she would say that.
I think you should test her out on this. And when she does her next Call Harriet in a couple of weeks' time, I shall be asking her if you have asked her.
I'm sure she will happily welcome me onto that bus. Partly,
so
actually.
You'll ask her.
I'll tell you, of course, I'm happy to go on the bus. Not least because if you look at a lot of the legislation on equal pay, on family-friendly working rights, if I have the privilege of being the business secretary in government, those are policy areas that I would be in charge of. And believe it or not, I have women in my family, etc.
Really?
So, yes, I care about these issues too.
Harriet Harman has just revealed that she has a pink iPad and she thinks it's not draining away her feminist credentials. I can vouch for that because I've seen her iPad.
Harriet has a pink iPad. Is that breaking news?
It is actually.
Is that a world exclusive on LBC?
Well, unfortunately, it was on Channel 4 News. But anyway, Rebecca, what would you like to say? You clearly do think this is a bit of a bad move.
I do. Well, I really welcome your efforts to get women involved. I do appreciate that there is an issue there, but I can't believe that this is the best option that someone could come up with. I really think there must be better ways of attracting female voters.
Although everyone's talking about it, isn't it, Rebecca?
Yeah, but not in a necessarily good way.
We're having a conversation about our women's campaign on LBC right now.
But I'm just wondering, in the meeting where they all decided to do this, that no one sort of stuck their hand up and said, do you not think this is possibly going to go down badly with our media
Well,
friends?
I think people were focused on the fact that we will be seeking to extend free childcare for the parents of 3 and 4-year-olds from 15 to 25 hours. I think people would have been focusing on other issues.
That's for men as well. It's not just that policy is not just about women; it's about men as well.
But I'm just talking about the policies. I'm not saying that's exclusively an issue for men, but of course, lots of women. That's a big issue.
Right,
childcare. Look, childcare is going to be a huge issue at the general election, and we make no apologies for raising it. And that's we want to focus on.
You've got that terrible phrase, "We make no apologies." Tristram Hunt said it 10 times on Question Time last week. And it was very annoying. Let's move on. Peter is in Leicester. Hello, Peter.
Good evening, Mr.
I'm worried. I think Ian might walk out of the studio. He's getting angry with
Peter,
me.
what would you like
Peter,
to
go
ask?
on.
Mr. Umunna, good evening. It's just a very quick question, if I may.
Sure.
A couple of months ago on Ask Harriet, and with Ian's show, Harriet Harman suggested that the Prime Minister lost 2 seats to UKIP. She was very sneering about it. Understandable. Mr. Umunna, you're about to lose 10 times that number. In fact, more than 10 times that number in Scotland. You're due to lose about 25 to 30 seats. And no one from Her Majesty's shadow cabinet seems to be remotely concerned. And I suggest to you, dear sir, that on polling day, and I live in Leicester, I'm a Scottish person, but I live in Leicester. I suggest to you that on polling day, when people come to think about voting Labour, they're just going to think, well, it's Labour plus SNP, and it's going to put the fear into people. And I'm afraid Mr. Edward Miliband, it's only my own opinion, sir, he will get filleted by Nicola Sturgeon, absolutely filleted. But what are you doing, Chuka? Why is nobody up there? Why is yourself, Harriet Harman, Mr. Balls, Edward Miliband, why is nobody in the shadow cabinet up fighting the good fight for the Labour Party? I'm a Labour supporter.
But we are...
You are invisible.
Well, Peter, thanks for your support. Really, appreciate your support, and we don't take anybody's support for granted, so thanks for that. But as it happens, I've just this afternoon been meeting with the Scottish Chambers of Commerce to talk about how we can work together to grow the economy of Scotland, how important it is to the UK, and also how we can get more of our Scottish businesses exporting. So it's coincidental actually that you should be asking me a question, because literally just a few hours ago I was with a Scottish business leader talking about these kinds of issues.
Can you remember his name?
Sorry?
Can you remember his name?
Well, look, I'm not going to name the people on it. No, I do remember the names. But look, I'm not going to. I'm not disclosing who I had because I didn't tell. It was a private meeting.
Well, why shouldn't we all know who it was?
Because I don't disclose the details of everybody that I meet with. I've been good enough to actually tell you that I met with one of those organisations. But Peter, just to engage with your specific point. Ed Balls actually was up in Scotland 2 or 3 weeks ago campaigning with Jim Murphy. But look, let's not declare the match over before it's really started. Parliament hasn't dissolved yet. I'm not going to be disingenuous and claim that we haven't got a really big job to do in Scotland and that the terrain, is anything but difficult. It's very difficult indeed. But I think ultimately, the way we'll win back support in Scotland is by putting forward a hopeful, optimistic vision of what all parts of the UK can do together to work our way through this world where actually I don't think this is a time to fragment. We're up against emerging market economies like the Chinese economy with its 1.3 billion people, India, etc. This is a time when we pull together to meet the common challenges that we face, with technology changing our lives beyond belief and disrupting our economy in a good way, creating jobs but also destroying jobs people have done for generations, and we've got so much international competition. I think we are so much better placed to meet those challenges together, and that's also the reason why I'm so passionate in my belief that the UK's got to remain a member of the European Union. But look, I think we've got to meet the challenge that you pose. I agree with that.
But how important are the relations between the Westminster Labour Party and the Scottish Labour Party? I mean, how many Scottish MSPs can you name?
Well, I wouldn't be able to name every single MSP.
No, can you name any of them? I'm not sure I could.
Of course, Kezia Dugdale, Ian Gray. I mean, somebody's tried this on me before.
I know, I've got
Andrew Neil. But look, part of what comes with having a more federal structure in the UK, and frankly, I want that. I think too much is done in Westminster. I was very struck, actually, this time last year. I visited France, I visited Paris, and I went to their National Assembly there and went to see French PMQs. And one of the things that I was struck by, amongst many other things, I'm not the biggest fan of PMQs as an institution in our country. I'd like to abolish it and replace it with something else, frankly. But the whole of government turns up and answers questions. And there were about the French have about 34 ministers. We have over 80 because so much is done here in London.
But just out of interest, you said PMQs, so you'd like to abolish it and replace it with something else. What would you want to replace it with?
Well, I don't think it's doing the job we need it to do right now. I think we could replace it with something that was more discursive. Interestingly, Harold Wilson used to run PMQs in the way that the French do. So he didn't answer all the questions, actually. He often would have other cabinet members answer questions.
Well, that's what happens in the Australian Parliament.
Yeah, which I think is quite interesting. Also, you could maybe have a situation where backbenchers don't just ask one question, they ask two or three. So they actually have to have a proper discussion about policy instead of, you've seen some of the kind of either placed questions or things asking the Prime Minister to congratulate somebody on something. And I don't think that does anything for our politics.
But in the Australian Parliament, the Australian Prime Minister goes to Parliament every single day that it's sitting and answers questions. I mean, that wouldn't be feasible for our Parliament,
I don't. And also, one of my issues with the way we do politics in our country is I think it's far too adversarial. It's too tribal. I mean, I always say this. You were asking me earlier about Stephen Green. Frankly, I didn't care that he was a Conservative Trade Minister. I thought, well, I can work with this guy to help my small businesses. And,
right, we'll take more of your questions in just a minute. 0345 6060 973 if you'd like to talk to Chuka Umunna. It's 12 minutes to 8.
This is Adam Moore in the LBC Travel Centre. The main problem at the moment is for those of you heading eastbound on the M4 towards London. It's been caused by an accident. A car's overturned, blocking the inside lane just by Junction 4 for Heathrow and Uxbridge. Big queues all the way back past the M25 towards Langley at Junction 5. The other problem is that 2 lanes are shut on the exit slip. 2 out of the 3 lanes closed on the eastbound exit slip at Junction 4. One of the cars involved in that accident has ended up there. So that's also adding to the queues back on to the main carriageway of the M4 towards London. Problems tonight in Nottinghamshire. The northbound M1, there's a lane shut for recovery after an accident between Hucknall at Junction 27 and Alfreton at 28. And in Gloucestershire, the M4 eastbound is queuing. The exit slip road at Junction 18 for Bath and Tormarton is partly blocked. There's been a collision there. That's causing delays as you head off towards the A46. Keeping you moving, your next travel update is in half an hour.
LBC Travel.
With GoToMeeting, helping smart businesses meet more and travel less.
Remembering every phone number you've ever called is not impressive. What is impressive is remembering to call 118434 whenever you need a number. 118434. It's the handy number for handy numbers.
Calls cost 76 pence plus £1.53 per minute from a BT landline. Other networks vary and mobiles cost considerably more.
Have you heard about invisible hearing aids? Well, you certainly won't have seen them. Boots Invisible Hearing Aids are so small they won't be noticed, giving you the confidence to get on with every day. And now there's a third off. So pop into your local Boots or book a hearing check online today. Boots. Let's feel good. Selected hearing aids only. Terms and conditions apply. See in-store for details. Offer ends 31st of March 2015.
He'll happily spend £90 on jeans or trainers, or £500 on a phone that can say if it's raining in Acapulco, which it never is. I thought my son didn't understand the value of money until he said we could save £750 on his car insurance with Ingenie. £750? A father-son trip to that Ibiza, maybe. Show off my moves.
Ingenie customers say we saved them £750 on average. See how much you could save at Ingenie.com. Ingenie, insurance for 17 to 25s. Drive well, pay less.
It's that time of year again. Time to turn the lights down low, light the candles, and be seduced by a dazzling French model. Like the Renault Clio, with up to £1,500 deposit contribution at 6.9% APR representative during Renault Romance season. Ooh la la. 6.9% APR representative, ordered and registered by 31st of March 2015 at participating dealers only. Finance provided by Renault Finance, subject to status and over 18s. T's and C's apply. See Renault.co.uk/offers.
I was like most blokes, ballroom dancing. You're having a laugh. But the missus watched it on the telly, and after a wee bit of ear bending, I've given it a bash. Now I'm hooked. Mind you, all this gear doesn't come cheap. Still, Aviva saved me a few quid on my car insurance. Quality rhinestones didn't grow on trees, you know.
5-star car insurance from just £185, direct from Aviva. 10% of new customers paid £185 for standard cover August to October 2014, price to individual circumstances.
Before we all got smartphones, people would actually memorise phone numbers and impress you with their phone booking knowledge. Do that today, and people will think you're just a bit sad. But if you told them about 118434, they'd be dead impressed, because 118434 is the only number you need for any number you want. 118434, the handy number for handy numbers.
Calls cost 76 pence plus £1.53 per minute from a BT landline. Other networks vary, and mobiles cost considerably more.
Coming up at 8 on LBC. Clive Bull.
The traditional Bible left in bedrooms is under threat as students at a university vote to ban the compulsory provision of the book at their accommodation. This follows a leading hotel chain removing Gideon Bibles from its rooms. In today's multicultural society, are the students right that it's inappropriate to place a Bible automatically in people's bedrooms?
Leading Britain's conversation. Clive Bull. This evening from 8 on LBC.
7:53. Chuka Umunna is here with me taking your calls. He's Labour's Shadow Business Secretary. Emma in Taunton says, when you're sitting round the Shadow Cabinet table, can you tell me which of your colleagues have ever run a business?
I can. I'm just not sure. I know that there are a few colleagues who have businesses that are family businesses, but don't really want to bring their families into this.
So you're not going to name them either? You're not doing a lot of naming tonight, are you, Chuka?
Well, I think you should keep people's families as much as you possibly can out of the kind of political...
but do you understand the point?
I do understand the point.
The implicit point that Emma's making.
Yeah. But what I'd say to Emma is that, I look in the Shadow business team, and we have lots of people with business experience. Liam Byrne is an entrepreneur, set up his own business. Ian,
doing what?
He is the Shadow Skills Minister. It was a tech business, actually. The Shadow Trade and Investment Minister, Ian Murray, who's also in my team, used to run an events company. Toby Perkins, the Shadow Small Business Minister, used to run his own rugby supply company. So there are business people in the Labour Party.
But not round the Shadow Cabinet table, though?
Offhand, I can't think of anyone specifically. A lot of people, I've worked for business. I was talking about this yesterday to the British Chambers of Commerce. I've advised businesses large and small as a solicitor on different issues. And, but my father was an entrepreneur. But
if I ask this question to somebody who sat around the cabinet table, they would point out Philip Hammond, who started his own business. They would point out Jeremy Hunt, who started his own business. And that sort of feeds into the narrative that there aren't people...
Well,
yes, you have advised business. It's not quite the same as running your own, though, is it?
Yeah, but hang on just a minute, though. I think there is a bit of a lazy narrative that says... I've often actually seen it said about me that, some kind of career politician who was a researcher, worked for a trade union or think tank and then became an MP. I was none of those things. I was a solicitor for the best part of a decade and I worked in the private sector. And I look around the shadow cabinet table. I'm very proud of the background of my colleagues. This idea that somehow we're all from elite backgrounds. I look at someone like Vernon Coker, a former teacher. In fact, John Trickett, who sits around the shadow cabinet table, used to run his own construction outfit. So I suppose he would fall under the bracket of being a bit, having been a business person. So look, I'm not saying that we don't need more diversity in Parliament, both in terms of people's occupation, their gender and ethnicity, but it is a bit lazy to suggest that we all... I'll give you an example, actually. I chaired a digital breakfast that we did for lots of companies.
Sounds exciting.
Well, look, you're a digital man, you're a tech man, and I looked at the different people who were on the panel, and you had Chuka Umunna, who used to work for Nortel, was a computer engineer.
Okay, well, we get the message.
I can go through the list. So
we've only got 3 minutes left, so let's go to Paul in Bromley. Hello, Paul.
Hi.
Paul, what would you like to ask?
I'd like to ask Chuka, if Labour win the election, what would they do about the Julian Assange situation, which seems like an utter waste of taxpayers' money?
Well, I have to say, Paul, ultimately it's an issue for the Mayor of London. It's a policing issue, a Met policing issue, and it does seem to me like a huge amount of money to be spending, a colossal sum of money to be spending, which I'd rather have spent on policing in my own constituency. So if there's a way that we can end this situation, I'd like to see that happen as soon as possible, because frankly it's not doing anything for my constituents and they are paying for this.
Well, in the end, the way to end it is for Julian Assange to go to Sweden, isn't it?
Well, I don't know, but I certainly don't want any more money spent on it. We've got enough fiscal, issues, public finances are tight enough, and I don't see what this is really doing for our country. And I'm sure I'm going to have lots of liberal-minded people having a go at me on human rights and the rest of it.
Quick call from Adrian in Clapham. Hello, Adrian.
Hello, Chuka, good evening. I'm one of your constituents, and I want to know why Labour's designed a mansion tax that's going to be paid 80% by people who live in ordinary flats, terrace houses and semis, who are just going to find the money by cutting down on expenditure on local tradesmen and butchers and bakers and coffee shops, taking it straight out of the local community. So does Labour hate London or what?
We don't hate London, and I certainly don't agree with what you said, Adrian. The overwhelming majority of people in our constituency do not live in houses worth £2 million or more, and all we're asking...
Well, 80% of the mansion tax is going to be paid by people who live in flats, terrace houses and semis, and in London.
But I'm sorry, a very small percentage of properties in our constituency will be affected by this. And ultimately, the reason that we're introducing this high value property tax is so that we can fund the NHS. We're living in very straitened times. Public finances are tight, and all we're asking is that those who have slightly broader shoulders financially bear a little bit more of the burden, so we can keep our hospitals going and, importantly, recruit more nurses. We've massively understaffed in our wards at the moment. But I'll just be absolutely clear, most people in Streatham and the parts of Clapham, Balham and Brixton that I represent, for them, living in a £2 million property, that is another planet.
OK, Chuka, thank you very much indeed. Only one more hour to go before the election when we have you in the studio. So it's sort of, it's going to be an exciting election, I think. Chuka,
I always enjoy coming on. Thanks for having me on, Ian.
We're very pleased to have you on. I will be back tomorrow at 4, because that's all we have time for today. Duncan Barks is here with you from 10. But next up, it's Clive Bull.
Thanks, Ian. And coming up after the news, the traditional Bible left in bedrooms is under threat as students at a university vote to ban the compulsory provision of the Bible at their accommodation, and this follows a leading hotel chain removing Gideon Bibles. So in today's society, are the students right that it's inappropriate to place a Bible automatically in people's rooms? And MPs have voted today to ban drivers in England from smoking in their cars if they're carrying children as passengers. Do you welcome this latest clampdown on smokers? 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. From LBC, I'm